Welcome, good evening. What's going on right here is absolutely inconceivable. It is astounding. It is unimaginable. It is, well, words fail. Literally, words fail. And yet typically most of us don't notice that. Typically, most of us approach this astounding, inconceivable condition as if it was humdrum, as if it was boring, as if it was a dull normalcy that we fumble through trying to find sort of small pleasures and small achievements and avoid suffering and failure, usually with very mixed success. But in actuality, what this is, this right here, this actual event that's happening right here, right now, is astounding, inconceivable, amazing. You know, there are not adequate superlatives to begin to indicate this, to begin to capture this. And the only reason that most of us don't notice this, most of us don't perceive how incredible this is because we already think we know what it is, and so we censor our experience. We only pay attention to those portions of our experience that we think are important, things having to do with our lives, things having to do with success, things having to do with gratification, things having to do with our personal agendas that we think have value as little human beings in this vast universe that is largely hostile or indifferent or certainly inert and generally not particularly interesting. But if we can let ourselves actually see, actually notice what this is, how astounding this is, how inconceivable this is, and that this inconceivability is our constant condition. It's our actual environment. It is our actual nature. It is our actual embodiment. The implications and the nature of what this is, of what we are, removes the context of all problems, removes the context of all suffering, removes the context of all failure. What this actually is completely indescribable. And yet we can very vaguely indicate it, perhaps by noticing that it's an astounding explosion of energy appearing in inconceivable infinite consciousness. That sounds very abstract, doesn't it? That sounds, gosh, that sounds great. If you read that in the book, it's like, God, that sounds cool, where's that happening? But this explosion of energy is just your immediate experience right here, right now. You're experiencing a field of vision. You're experiencing a field of light in your consciousness right now. What does that mean? What is light? How is this happening? What is it made of? What is experiencing it? Where is it appearing? What is the actual dynamism of this condition, of these circumstances? We usually completely ignore that aspect. I'm just interested in what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people, or are they interested in me? Do they give a shit? Can I impress them? Can I get money from them? Can I, avoid having them inflict pain and suffering on me? But actually, there's no people here. There's this field of light. There's this field of vision, and in the imagination, we effortlessly turn that into seeing a bunch of people. We're all, of course, intimately familiar with this when we dream. Every night, most of us dream. And in a dream, there is an astounding apparition out of nothing of an entire environment, very convincing environment. There can be people there can be situations there can be apparently complex events. And of course, actually, there's no people there. There's no people in a dream. There's no events in a dream. There's no environment in a dream, even though it appears as if that was the case, and our imagination readily abstracts that from our experience of this astounding energy presence, which a dream actually is. But we don't notice that it's an astounding energy presence typically, and we just go to it as some circumstance that we're invested in. We're trying to avoid pain, we're trying to get some success, we're trying to find some pleasure, we're trying to, navigate with some energies that we seem to find valuable or are trying to avoid. But none of those things are actually there in a dream, are they? A dream is just this bizarre, miraculous mirage that appears in nothing. That's the only thing that's actually there. This amazing radiation of an inconceivable presence in consciousness. That's what a dream is. When we wake up, we know this. You think back on a dream. It was a dream. There was nothing there. It was a dream. There was no one there. And yet, exactly the same thing, exactly the same mechanism is happening right here, right now. You are experiencing a field of energies, let's call it. And you may break those down into, you may say, I'm experiencing light, I'm experiencing sound, I'm experiencing touch, I'm experiencing taste and smell, I'm experiencing a field of thought, I'm experiencing maybe other subtle little weird vibes or whatever. The fact is, you don't know what you're experiencing. It's a bizarre, miraculous presence. And to say it's light, do you know what light is? Anyone here know what light is? Anyone here can just, give us the definition, the final word on exactly what light is? The greatest physicists that ever lived don't know what light is. And if society continued, which I personally kind of doubt, in a few thousand years, with advancement, you get the greatest physicists of that age and ask them what light is. They're not going to know either, because there's no final word on what this is. It's a miracle. How can you get a final word on a miracle? That's just light. We have all other qualities of apparition that we maintain are appearing as our experience. And we think we have the arrogance to think we know what they are, so we normalize them. We turn them into a condition of normalcy or dullness. Oh, it's just light. Of course, I'm seeing light. There's always light. The lights are on. Big deal. And by doing so, we render a literal miracle into dullness, into stupidity, into irrelevance. And we do this with every aspect of our experience. Matter, What's matter? What's light? What's thought? What's communication? All these things are inconceivable. No one knows what they are. No one can know what they are because they transcend themselves. There's no final version of them. They're literally infinite. When you look into what anything is, it doesn't converge to a certainty, to a simplicity. On the contrary, the more you look at what anything is, the more it opens up into more. And then you look at a portion of that, and that portion opens up into more. So you're just, it's like a mirage. It just keeps receding ahead of you. You never get to the bottom of it. You never get, oh yeah, I finally found out what it is. Now I know what light is. You look at light and you investigate it, and it's like, the fantasy is it's going to converge, and then, oh yeah, that's light. And now I know what it is. But the more you look at it, the weirder it becomes. It just gets stranger and stranger and stranger. And this is not a failure of investigation. This is what it actually is. It is a miraculous open-endedness. In Buddhism, of course, they call that emptiness or the void or various other terminologies, which is all very nice and poetic and technical, but it's just a way of saying that, what is this? What is this? And just noticing that we don't know, opens the door to directly experiencing what this really is. Because in that not knowing, it can show us what it is. But of course, we're usually busy telling it what it is. Oh, this is the Hillside Club. It's Berkeley, and this is, some spiritual talk or other. And afterwards, you go out and you have a beer. You go home and you watch some TV and go to bed, read a book. And tomorrow, it's another day, another dollar. But if we could just let go of all that for a second and just look around at this absolute unknown. Right here, right now. It's not some unknown, some metaphorical unknown or some abstraction of unknown. It's an unknown that's in your face. It's an obvious unknown. It's a blatant unknown. It's this incredible, inconceivable presence that is just stupefying. That is, the only appropriate action is to just scream wow or break out laughing or faint or ignore it and go get a beer. Anyway, we can have some discussion if anyone's interested in it. There's another microphone. We don't really need it, of course, because it's such a small group, but there are people online listening, or there may be, and that way they'll be able to hear what we say. So if you have something you'd like to say or ask or talk about, if you'd please make a little indication, then a mic will be passed to you.
So, amidst all this wealth of what we don't know, is there anything that we do know?
What do you know?
I don't know.
Can you find a certain? What is there any certainty that you can find? Anything you can look at in your experience and say, well, I know this for sure.
Well, I guess my own presence.
Okay, presence. When you say my own presence, what does that mean?
Well, that's the one that's usually around when I'm around.
Okay. Is it ever around when you're not around?
Not that I know of. Right, but I meant my presence as contrasted to the presence of other people, which comes and goes.
Does it come and go?
Sure looks like it.
Well, your presence is always there.
Yeah.
And anything that appears in your presence.
Mm-hmm.
So why define the things that appear as being anything other than that? When you dream at night, it's all your presence. Even if it looks like you're talking to somebody, it's not like they're coming and going because there's no them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just your presence, which is always here. Right?
Yeah, except the other beings in dreams seem less substantial than the ones that are here.
Do they?
During waking times. Yeah.
Do they?
Hmm?
Hmm. So, my presence here is somehow different than, say, the presence of this napkin? Am I more present or less present or the same presence as this napkin in your experience right now?
You're the same, but you're not.
I'm the same as this napkin. Am I the same as this spoon or different? Am I more present or less present in this spoon?
You're larger.
Well, no.
You're more visible.
Am I more visible than this spoon?
Yeah, because
if I put the spoon in front of me, can you sort of see through it and sort of see me?
I don't know.
So,
but if you were in a dream, you'd be less substantial than this one sitting here now.
Would I be less? Would me in a dream be less substantial than this spoon in a dream?
Equally insubstantial.
Okay. So what you're saying is maybe your presence in a dream is less substantial, and if I was appearing in the dream, I would be that less substantial presence of yours. Yeah. The spoon would be that less substantial presence of yours. Here, you're saying your presence is a little more substantial. Right? And so, of course, me appearing as your presence, I'm more substantial. The spoon is more substantial. Mm-hmm. But the point I'm getting at is the presence of your experience is all of a single quality, right? In other words, The napkin is not more or less present than I am. The hillside club is not more or less present than I am, right?
Right.
So why bother to differentiate that I have a presence other than the presence of your experience? Isn't that an abstraction?
Yeah, well,
Suppose this napkin was actually a very sophisticated high-tech robot that could make facial expressions and be talking and be moving its head around and things like that. How would you distinguish between me and it? Would I have more or less presence than it had?
I don't know. I think you would still have more.
I would have more. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. The other question, since I don't know how far we can go with what we were just doing there, but do you think there's a purpose or a function to dreaming?
What does purpose or function mean?
Well, that there's some point in that, like it's some psychological activity we go through, or if we didn't, we would go crazy or something like that, like kind of Freudian view maybe.
I think there's exactly the same purpose or point in dreaming as there is in this experience.
Exactly the same?
Exactly the same.
Because probably quite a large number of people don't dream, or a large number don't remember their dreams either, wouldn't you say?
Don't know. Maybe.
I think so. But it seems that because of the amount of the abstraction or the wild freedom of dreams, that seems to have a function that's different than this reality.
Are dreams an abstraction? Dreams are very concrete. They're present. They're very present as dreams.
But when we're in the middle of them, they are like completely liberated and free, it seems like. Or at least
This is liberated and free. You don't know what's going to happen in the next instant.
well, I know that I'm probably not going to fly through the ceiling or something that I might do in a dream.
You might.
It hasn't happened yet.
That doesn't mean anything.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
What happens in the next instant is always 100% a surprise, isn't it? You don't know what I'm going to say. You don't know how I'm going to move. You don't know. This is an absolutely spontaneous, free apparition, which is completely indeterminate. You don't know what you're going to think. You don't know what you're going to say. You don't know what you're going to do.
Yeah. Dreams still seem a lot more, I can't think of the right word, more free in the behavior that takes place. You know. And I've never seen you do somersaults in this situation, but
Yet.
yeah, okay. All right. Thank you.
We have a question from the ether world. In addition to not naming or conceptualizing, is there any merit in putting attention on the vagueness or ambiguity of experience?
There's a great merit if you see what's actually there. Our greatest tool, spiritually speaking, is the fact that reality is nakedly revealed before us. So we can examine it, we can investigate it, we can explore it. And the point is to explore it as it is rather than to supply expectations of what we think we're going to find, which is just more telling it what it is and serves to obscure matters and complicate them. And I think that if you investigate your experience, you'll discover a great deal of ambiguity, a great deal of open-endedness, a great deal of indeterminacy that is inherent in what experience actually is. If this is the case, of course it's valuable to do so because you'll be discovering something about what this is, which is the only thing to discover, certainly the only thing worth discovering. And successfully discovering what this is, i.e. what you are, is the end of spirituality. It's the goal of spirituality.
Lately, I've been seeing how unreal my reality is, and yet how the fetters to my being able to see what is actually true and here is essentially fear and shame. And it's a real tag team and a mixture. The fear is mixed with shame also. There's some, I'm becoming more accepting of it, and seeing that I have to, seeing the value of this acceptance, and the potential, the possibility. But it feels like there's something so much greater than myself that wants to reveal itself. But the fear and the shame is it wants to kind of run and hide from that because it's ashamed of itself.
If I could interrupt you a second.
Yeah.
Fear of what and shame of what?
Exposure is the best word.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a series, the way I've seen it recently, there's a whole series of little energies in my system that make up the me.
Right.
And those little energies are a combination of awakeness and sleep.
Right. Now, if
Okay.
I could interrupt once
So
again.
shame.
If I could interrupt once again. Where do those energies come from?
I don't know. Well, I could say they came over time. They start with a program from childhood, and then
Right, but
how
where
I
did that come from? Where did your childhood come from? Where did your body come from?
Okay, you're asking me if I'm understanding prior to these
Well,
energies?
it doesn't matter temporally, but just where does it come from? You know, if you ask where does an oak tree come from, you say it comes from an acorn. Where did the acorn come from? Another oak tree. And you could also say the oak tree also comes from chemicals that were dissolved in the ground that get sucked up through its roots and incorporated and builds the body of the tree. So the oak tree basically comes from a non-oak tree. The oak tree comes from groundwater. The oak tree comes from nature. The oak tree comes from other oak trees. So any given oak tree doesn't come from itself. It comes from otherness. So this otherness, this great otherness, is actually what produces you. So it is you.
You see, I think I follow you a little bit. In my perception, these energies that I talked about that make up the me, or that are made up of shame and fear, they're a mixture of awakeness and sleep. See, they're regulated energies. My awakeness has a regulation. It's like I'll only be so much awake, and then I'm shutting out a lot of the rest of existence.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's a prior to that, like an original source. That's what wants to reveal itself to me and wipe out, and these energies return to it, these little...
Well, you say the energies return to it. Are the energies anywhere else than the source is? So what's this about return?
Well, it's not, you see, all of what I'm indicating doesn't follow the rules of logic. So you have to be kind of compassionately get the gist. There's something like this. So maybe there's something like a me that still isn't opening up to what you alluded to when I walked into the room. If you said something I can't quite remember,
Right.
maybe you can refresh, of if we were truly here,
Okay,
would be
so
open to the totality.
If I could interrupt just a sec. So what's the problem with that? So if there's a you that hasn't quite opened up, and yet you're pursuing that kind of opening, you wouldn't be coming to meetings like this, would you?
Correct.
And you
But-
probably are a little more open now maybe than you were 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah, there's...
So it's
lots of-
happening. It's working. Sounds like a done deal to me. It's just a
Well,
process that has to
I call
continue.
it the growth process is working.
Yeah.
The growth process. But there are stages in growth, and if you look at nature, everything, the seed goes through many stages. It's just...
Yeah.
Even the seed to become a tree, it's many
Right.
stages, and then a flower, and then a fruit,
Sure.
and then so on and so forth.
Sounds
so
good.
I'm just in stages, and so I'm at a particular stage kind of now where it's much more challenging, it's much more threatening to my existence, and it's very exciting, and at the same time it's very stark, because I get to see myself in a kind of nakedness and shame of a kind of, and I'm growing, and to be able to confessionally be capable of seeing my that the ugly side to my limited condition, and I feel like there's real potential in being able to accept the fear and the shame.
Yeah, that sounds good. One interesting aspect of all this is it has an obvious and inherent dynamism. Nothing stays the same. Everything inherently changes. None of us are what we are or where we were 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 seconds ago. There's this astounding dynamism, like a waterfall, like Niagara Falls. It's just always different than itself, always changing. And so if we did absolutely nothing whatsoever, we would still be different in the next instant. We would still be different in the next year. There's this amazing nature by its very nature, no pun intended, nature by its very nature, sounds like a bumper sticker, moves. It's life lives, life grows, life moves on. You know, we call it maturing, we call it, it doesn't matter what you call it, but everything develops. So spirituality ultimately is doing itself. We're all gaining in wisdom to the extent we are. We're gaining in sentience, or noticing our sentience to the extent we are, and so on and so forth. And all of this happens spontaneously. We're very arrogant, and we think we take credit for the direction and the things we're doing, but actually it just comes out of left field irrationally, and we're just drawn to try this, and we muddle around, and again, spontaneously change happens, things develop, and we muddle into something else, and then again, spontaneously change happens, things develop. So this unfolding is the nature of things. You can't stop it, you can't do it, you can't contrive it, and we don't even know what it is. We can spin doctor it and say, these days I'm in the middle of such and such, and I'm really trying to do such and such. But all of that's just spin doctoring. It's just bullshit. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're in the middle of. It's this multidimensional open-endedness, inconceivability. And it's doing itself, and it's moving on. To the extent that's relevant. To the extent there's any motion and any on, but that will reveal itself too, or not.
So sometimes it's very life-threatening, very threatening.
But
Sometimes
that's okay. The worst that'll happen.
blissful,
The
it's
worst
this
that'll
and that,
happen is
but
you'll
that's
die, and that's going to happen anyway. So
the-
that's not a problem.
Worse than death is that I don't die before I die, and then I see that I blew it this time around.
Well, maybe next time you'll get luckier, right?
Well, hopefully I can face the fear and the shame, and maybe something will break through. It's not like fear and shame is up all the time, but it's up the last few days, and it seems very promising. I'm surprised that there's nothing that you can go with that. Was there ever a time in your life when suddenly this unknowable presented itself as so big that you realized, oh my God, I've really underestimated this, and that it's like 200 yards away from you and wants to enter your reality, and in that so doing, all of these squiggles of the energy that is me is going to unwind and be erased. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing, but at the same time there's fear, and there's also shame for having lived this life of sleep, and those little energy squiggles in my system don't really want to they kind of reveal themselves in the condition they're actually in. It's a strange scenario. It's strange that would kind of be there. It's kind of like all of the everything in the system would want to be more of a saint before that energy comes and floods the system. It's kind of like it's ashamed of its condition, and so that's something I really have to overcome is the wrong word. It's accept. I continue to work with it, improve myself or whatever, but also I'm finding more potential in this, having the strength to accept my weakness, my fear, my shame, which is kind of like being.
All that sounds great. Sounds good. Sounds like you're in process.
I didn't have much. Sure.
I'm sorry?
I say I guess I didn't have much. I'm just feeling like I'm wasting everybody else's time. It must just be a personal thing with me. It's been really, I'm surprised you didn't take an interest.
Oh, I have an interest. I'm sitting here. You haven't asked me a question, or you've been telling me this condition, and I have talked with you about it and saying that this is obviously the condition that you, as you're interpreting it, that you seem to be going through. And the operative word there is going through, and it looks the way it does now, and it is moving on as it has moved on in the past and will continue to move on in the future. And you don't seem to have any questions about what to do about it or how to deal with it, or you haven't presented them as such. So it's not a matter of disinterest.
So has anything like that ever showed up in your life experience? And if that'd be one question.
Yeah, I could say so. I could say something vaguely.
How would you, first that'd be.
Sure. I mean, it's hard to say specifically from your descriptions, but I felt fear. I felt confusion. I felt threatened in my self-definition. Sure.
And was there ever a passage through and a breakthrough?
Sure. Yeah. Many. But these things are very subjective and personal, and they have their own dynamism individually, and I don't know that I could really say very intelligibly what happened or what the elements involved were or what I did, because ultimately everything I thought I was doing was wrong. In other words, I was misunderstanding what was happening, and I think the point of these things is to confront them, to experience them, rather than to discover techniques or have tricks to how to deal with them. Because, again, just experiencing these things, ultimately they transform, they reveal themselves to be more, they open up into something else, and then we have something new to deal with.
So has a force that seemed far more superior in intelligence. A superior intelligence, is that?
Superior to what?
For myself, occasionally an intelligence visits that's so superior to anything I could ever imagine. It's beyond my imagination. It's
Right.
beyond my comprehension.
Sure.
And then I see, oh my God, I've been living my life completely underestimating the whole thing.
Right.
It's kind of a revisitation, and it's a strange phenomena because somehow
Well, all
I
phenomena
know
are
that
strange,
force.
so.
Strange in that somehow I know it, and yet I don't know it. It's like a friend, but
Sure.
but I know that I've never actually realized. I've never ever.
Well,
it's never actually entered.
You're
So
very
it's-
fortunate that it's revealing itself to you and you're discovering it, and this process hopefully will continue. The actual intelligence is inconceivable and is unimaginable. And this is the intelligence that does everything. It's the intelligence that's putting all this here. It's the intelligence that organizes the dance of the inconceivable quarks, does the four forces of physics, is doing your consciousness, is doing your thinking, is doing your metabolism, is digesting your food. This intelligence is inconceivable and unimaginable. It's literally miraculous, and it's right here, right now, doing everything. And if you're beginning to discover this, beginning to experience it or having an intuition of it, this is wonderful. And I hope that continues. I recommend continuing to try to feel it, continuing to try and investigate it and be with it as it is, and let it continue to reveal itself to you. And you will discover ultimately that you are it. Let me have some.
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
I was just pondering that the very fact that I can be aware of an object somehow makes it impossible for me to be of the same nature as the object, because objects aren't aware of anything else.
I'm sorry, objects aren't aware of anything. How do you know what objects are aware of?
Well, it seems like objects aren't aware of other objects.
What it seems like, what does that mean? That means it's your fantasy.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
And I'm not saying that objects are aware of other objects, but I mean, I don't understand how you can have any notion that... in my experience, the only awareness whatsoever that I can know anything about is my own. I don't know any other awarenesses exist. As nearly as I can tell, my awareness is the only awareness that exists. Now, I can hypothesize that maybe you have awareness and maybe other people have awareness. I can hypothesize that every atom has awareness, but I can't know any of that. I may be dreaming all this, in which case I'm the only awareness here. And in fact, if I look empirically, the evidence for that seems pretty strong, because mine's the only awareness here. All this is appearing in my awareness. When I close my eyes, it all disappears. This is my experience. So I can hypothesize at great length about what other awarenesses might or might not be there, but it's all fantasies occurring in my awareness, which is the only real awareness.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of what I'm feeling, but that awareness somehow distinguishes itself because of its very nature somehow from everything else.
Does it? When you say the awareness distinguishes itself, I would suggest to look very carefully and see if it's not the awareness that's distinguishing itself, but a subtle discriminating intelligence that is categorizing aspects of awareness as this or that, which may be happening concurrently with awareness, but isn't necessarily one and the same in terms of the raw phenomena. I mean, ultimately it is the same. You know, talking about this stuff turns into gibberish real fast, but you know, let's say in your field of vision, for example, light is appearing in real time, and the light is infinitely differentiated, but it's all just light. So you have no basis. You can infinitely break, you know, I can say, that's you, and that's your left hand, that's your right hand, and that's your 10,000 hairs, and each hair has 10,000 molecules, and so, you know, how many things are there? Well, it depends how I want to count it. I can cut the pie into smaller pieces, or I can cut the pie into bigger pieces, but it's just a pie. So likewise, in your experience, it presents itself as a pie, and the pie appears in your awareness. So the pie is here, and your awareness is here, and bang, they're one. There's no distance. It's not like your awareness is over here and the light is over there. It's like, bang, it's in. The light appears in your awareness in the same sense that when you dream, the dream appears in your awareness. It's not like your awareness is over here and the dream is appearing over there somewhere, and there's like some kind of a gap. The dream is in your awareness, is made of awareness. There's nothing else there but awareness, so what else could it be made of? So likewise, this is appearing in your awareness, right? So all of a sudden saying there's objects, saying there's distance, saying there's difference, it sounds to me like there's an interpretation being overlaid over the direct presence, which is just a presence. And it may be infinitely differentiated, but it's not actually separated, if you see what I mean. Do you follow that?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then this categorizing intelligence that looks at the experience and categorizes it as objects and this and that. It can also have fantasies and further interpretations about objects, like, oh, that object is alive, that object is dead, that object has awareness, that object doesn't. But all of these interpretations are fantasy because there's no basis for it. There's no evidence other than the raw presentation itself. But on all this, look and see for yourself, investigate, you know. Play with your own experience and try and notice this for yourself. What's important is your awareness of what's going on in your experience, not some theoretical interpretation or some, you know, philosophy about it.
Hi, Peter. Feeling a little bit confused. This weekend I attended some teachings given by a young Nyingma Rinpoche. And the protocol in that tradition is very clear-cut. There's a definite sequence of things to do, a certain context. And I felt, during the time that I went for the weekend series of teachings on death and dying, and there was a lot of general discussion about practice, and I felt very disconnected. I felt simultaneously inspired because the basic Dharma message came through loud and clear, but I felt very much on the outside that I was not this Rinpoche student, and a lot of the technicalities of what they were talking about I'm not familiar with. So the next day I called a Western Lama that I've gotten to know a little bit in another state, and he's actually a Dzogchen teacher. And he said, yeah, these Rinpoches are not going to want to deal with you if somebody is sitting on the fence. Should I do those practices? Should I not? He said, if you want to learn brain surgery, then you go to a medical school and you learn all the things that prepare one for that occupation. So likewise, if you want to gain realization, trying to do it on your own is not necessarily going to be fruitful. And I said, well, when I was young, I studied in the Theravada tradition with Jack Hornfield and Joseph Goldstein, and also I read a lot of Krishnamurti. And I said Krishnamurti was actually very dangerous because Krishnamurti had a genuine realization, but he was dismissing in his teaching the very things that got him to wherever he was. And he added that Krishnamurti realization is not the end of the path, that there's deeper realizations beyond where he's at that he would not be open to, because in his mind that's he has no reference. So I come here and it's very inspiring. I always feel in your company that taste of what you're pointing to. But now I'm beginning to wonder if I've been deluding myself in thinking that I can get this without formal help. This Western Rinpoche said that a skillful teacher can look at somebody and know exactly where they're blocked and give the appropriate practice, the appropriate medicine. You know, I've gone down a certain track with my practice and come up against the same obstacles again and again. Maybe that's karmic, maybe that's because the obstacles are so deep that they're not workable, I don't know. But I'm none of us are getting any younger. I'm 52, and in recent times I've almost just thrown up my hands like there's nothing I can do. It's a wash. You know, I'm like karma is too heavy, and I don't even know if any teachers would accept me. You know, and I don't even know if I have the concentration, the ability to do the practices that might be given to me. So I don't really know where I'm going with this, but please respond if you have any comments.
Well, one thing I would say is that there's always opportunity, because reality is always present. So reality is always available. The trick is, and ultimately, you brought in karma, and ultimately it's down to karma. It's down to having luck, having fortune, stumbling upon the right combination of events, information, internal functionality or ability to break the rules, or inspiration, or and then the chemistry of hooking up with apparent people on the outside that are, again, inspiring or somehow facilitating your own internal processes to make this jump, to make this kind of a leap to this moment. Because reality is right here. Reality is not something that's distant. And the real, our biggest advantage is that everything is made of reality already. Your karma, like you say you have heavy karma. Okay, heavy karma. You know, heavy karma is the name of the game. That's what we got around here. But if you look closely, what is the karma made of? What is your karma made of? I mean, what substance does it consist of? It has to be something, or it couldn't appear.
Well, it's perception.
Yes. Okay. What is perception made of? Right here, right now, what is perception made of?
And right here, right now, it's a lot lighter because, again, there's that rasa of transmission, whatever you want to call it, that sense of presence. So I can feel that to some extent, but
that the presence that's here now is always here, isn't it? And what's that presence made of?
Are you familiar with the concept of the winds and so forth?
Sure.
So I just sense, just off the top, that the way my energy flows, it makes everything seem heavy and thick where there's no...
Right, okay. so the energy is flowing and it seems heavy and thick. What's the energy made of? This heavy, thick, seeming energy, what's it made of? Right now, feel it. I mean, it's right here. If the energy, if it's anything other than just a concept or an abstraction, if it's actually present, what is it that's present? What's it made of? What the substance is presenting itself? Right now, just feel these energies. Feel the heavy energies. What is it that you're feeling? And I don't mean it qualitatively, but I mean, what's the substance of it? What is present? How is it present? How is the perception happening? How is the experience happening? What's the mechanism that's actually comprehensively going on there?
Those are the relevant questions, and as I've shared with you before, I almost feel like I would need to go into full-time retreat to get a handle on any of that.
Okay.
I may wind up doing.
Okay. Well, if you find that you're motivated to do that, then maybe you will. But what I'm trying to indicate is what you're calling energies are made of is present here now. They're made of what they're made of now in reality. This is not some abstraction or some subtle thing or something that's long ago and far away or something that has any distance you have to traverse to get to it. If it's present here, if you're feeling it, it's present here. What is it? It's there. It's right here. We have access to reality because it's actually what everything's made of. This is reality. This is it. This is not an abstraction. This is it. This is all the reality that there is right here. When you realize the heights of the most profound realization, what you will be realizing is exactly this, what's right here, right now. It's not something else that's somewhere far away on the Himalayas or something.
Sure, but I think there are very real things that are occurring that make it difficult or impossible to see that.
Yeah, I understand that. But if you break the rules, it's always possible. Just because it's difficult or impossible doesn't mean you can't do it anyway. You color outside the lines, you just say, screw it, and just go to the fucking center, just bang, just hit the nail on the head. It's doable, but again, you're right, it is a karmic thing. You have to have the luck or a combination of circumstances or whatever to just get that twitch and just cut to the chase.
I mean, I know that in different traditions they have different practices. Like this guy was talking about, this Tibetan Rinpoche on Saturday was talking about like vase breathing, whatever that is, working with the pranas.
Sure. But all of those practices, again, the height of any of those practices is to see what they're made of. So you're doing your pranayama, and the energies are flowing in the channels and blah blah blah. Cool. But what is it that's happening when that happens? And what that is and what that's made of is exactly what's happening when you're not doing the practice. So you don't need to do the practice to see that.
You're familiar with the concept of the central channel and the secondary channels? Yeah. So they seem to be pointing to the attempt to bring the energy back into the central, into the heart.
But bringing to the central channel is a metaphor for going to the substance right here, right now. This is the central channel. This is the central channel. This is it. See this? That's it. And what is it made of? And seeing what it's made of, bang, you're in the central channel. The central channel is just here now. It's not being spread out. It's not being spaced out. It's not being drifting off into fantasies. That's when the winds are dissipated and are up and off in the channels, and they're it's not the gears aren't engaged. But bang, you just come right here. What's this? What is this right now? What is this?
Well, the Western Lama Padma, this Western Rinpoche, the New Haven Center for Dzogchen Studies, that's his Sangha, he said that type of inquiry, that Dzogchen, what is the mind and so forth, he said that's very, very advanced practice, only given at a certain time, and that if people do that...
It may be an advanced practice, but the certain time it's given, and when it's given will be now. because you can't do anything other than now. So this might be that time.
Yeah, maybe it's been arrogance, or maybe it's been something else, but I was always drawn to that from when I first
Yeah.
started hearing about spiritual teachings.
Yeah, but again, we aggrandize these things in our imagination by overblowing them, these amazing practices and these, wonderful, exalted things, and maybe one day I'll be capable of doing it. But all of that is just fantasy. You just need to see what it is, and then all of a sudden you're worthy. All of a sudden you're there. And the highest practice is simply seeing what this is. This is the three kayas. This is the radiance of the ground. This is Rigpa, right here. This is it. And so just, you see that, and that's the highest practice. And to say, oh, I'm not ready, okay, cool, you're not ready, but it's right here. So if you want to not be ready, that's okay.
I mean, in the Dzogchen, they talk about the stages, what's it called, that begins with a T, the
Trekcho?
yeah, and the other one, I assume that means a deeper seeing, that you're seeing the same thing, but you come to see it more deeply, or you come to abide in it with more stability. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but all of this is just an abstraction. It's just a narration of, and telling a story, telling a tale of this simple fact of noticing this. And you notice this, you see it, and then the noticing and seeing, you come to see it further, and then, okay, there's deepening, there's development, there's more subtlety, there's this, there's that. Fine, but it's just this one thing. So the elaborations are unnecessary. All of these paths are not doing anyone any favor by having all these elaborations, because it's so, so simple. And ultimately, even if you're doing Dzogchen, it's so, so simple. It's just this, right here. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, Nisargadatta said just stay with the sense of I am.
That'll do her. I think we have a...
Okay, thank you.
The first question is, would you describe awareness as a knowing, even if it's not understood?
Yes, awareness cannot be understood, and awareness is a knowing.
Okay, the next one is, do you find infinite detail more accessible within the entire field of vision or other senses, or more easily by focusing in on an object?
Either. Find it where you can, look and see what it is, and look closer and you'll discover it everywhere else.
Thank you.
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Hi. My name is Philip. It's my first time.
Hi, good to meet you.
Thank you. Good to be here. I'm intrigued by the conversation that you were having with this gentleman.
Uh-huh.
And so when you said cut to the chase or see it now, there was something that kind of welled up. So I thought, well, I'll go for it. I've been kind of quiet at the last couple of satsang I've been at. So I don't know. I guess it's that silly question, but is there a way that you can help me see this, cut to the chase, and see?
Well, what are you seeing? Tell me what would you say you're seeing right now?
Well, I am hearing Rupert Spira a couple weeks ago, and I liked what he said about, I'm experiencing you. I think I'm experiencing you.
Okay.
But actually I'm feeling it here.
Right.
And I'm attributing what I'm feeling here to something that I'm saying is Peter's, like there's energy here.
Right.
But actually the energy's not over there. It's what I'm feeling inside of myself.
Good.
So yeah, so I feel like, I liked what you said about really all I know is my awareness.
Sure.
So all I know is that this is appearing before me, the appearance of people.
Sure.
And sometimes if I think about that, because I've thought about it before, it does kind of scare me a little bit, like, wow, like, is anybody really real here? Is it?
Sure.
Are they just this appearance?
It's a big question.
But, yeah. Yeah.
Is there life on Earth? The jury is out. Sorry, that was a joke.
No, that's great. That's great. So I don't know where to go really. I just keep hearing God is what is, and God is life, life is God.
You're doing good. You're experiencing that this is appearing in your awareness. That's good. Then try to get a little more precise. Be with it very precisely in terms of, well, what is it that's appearing in your awareness? specifically. Is it people? Well, it's visually, it's certainly shapes, you might say, or colors, or you know, if you look more closely, it's not even shapes or colors, but just a range of astounding differentiation of lighting factors, which are totally dynamic. They're different in the next. Every single one of them is different in itself in the next instant. So, I mean, it's like watching a light show or something, looking at your field of vision. So, are there really people? Well, you know, again, you can notice that there's a discriminating intelligence that characterizes aspects of your experience into sort of sets or groupings and creates objects, right? But then you can also notice that mechanism of abstraction, that mechanism of creating these abstract objects, is being superimposed on an actually present field of energies. We call them energies arbitrarily, whatever that is. You know, and then so at that point you can discriminate. Okay, there's this propensity to call it, you know, there's people and environment and buildings and cities and planets and galaxies, but in actuality there's a field of light, let's say, or a field that I'm calling light of an indeterminate energy. So first being able to separate that out, then you can set the abstractions aside. They won't stop, but that's unimportant, and try and look at what the light is. So, okay, there's this light that's present, or this, you know, this strange energy that's present as this field. How is it present? What is it that's present? What's it present in? In other words, be with your experience on a progressively more and more raw and direct level, and really. And again, the trick to this is to learn to discriminate between your fantasizing part of your mind that categorizes everything and thinks it knows about things, and the actual direct energies of experience themselves nakedly and rawly. And this is really just a matter of being with it and doing the math of just, you know, I'm not seeing a hand, I'm seeing light. You know, I'm not seeing light, what is it? You know? When I say seeing, what do I mean? When I say I, what do I mean? And all these things all sort of fall apart, but it doesn't stop. There's something here. There's something happening, but all of these abstractions that we usually superimpose on it as descriptions prove to be woefully inadequate. And then we get more and more just with this naked fact of this is exactly as it is, very specifically and very precisely, but we get beyond words very quickly. And so, you know, I mean, this is just kind of indicating a mode of inquiry, of just being with your experience more and more nakedly, and with less and less assumptions, a priori expectations, and so on. Because, of course, typically we're seduced into all of these, our arrogance of thinking we know what things are, which we usually hold unconsciously, so we don't even know we're doing it. We think they really are that things. You know, you really are people. This really is a building. You know, this really is a city. Whereas in actuality, it's my imagination that's supplying those interpretations over a field of indeterminate, absolutely unknown, bizarre energy presence. Does that click with you at all?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Kind of on that line, I think, but not too long ago, I had an experience where I saw the world in a different way. And I could encapsulate it by saying all the times I've heard that the world is in me and I'm not in the world, clicked. In that I realized that I've always thought there was a world. And at this moment, I realized that unless I thought about it, there was no world other than what was in my awareness at the time.
Yeah.
It's like there's still some thin veil that puts me back into that other world. But somewhere I know nothing other than there is no world other than this right now, and I can't say any more words about it, but maybe you could say something.
Yes, certainly. This is very good. This is a wonderful intuition of a big step into realizing your actual situation. This is all happening in you, which is a very strange revelation in the context of the normal worldview that, modern society seems to espouse. Yet, when we have these kinds of openings and revelations, they occur in the context of our habit of holding things a certain way. For many, many years, you've sort of held that the world really existed and it was outside you and it was a certain way. And so you get the revelation, you get the intuition that, wow, things seem to be quite different than that, and it's pretty amazing and pretty strange and perplexing and whatever, right? But there is because we've held these things for so long, there's a tendency to sort of go back there, to reflect on that point of view, and to try and contrast the two. This is very, very typical. I think most people have this kind of experience when they have these kinds of revelatory realizations, where there's this kind of a moving back and forth and going into the old point of view. But the point isn't to abandon the old point of view or sort of transcend it in one leap, so much as to incorporate it, to see that the old point of view is just an interpretation of the new point of view and have the two ultimately merge. And this is usually accomplished by a kind of a yo-yo effect where we move back and forth over time. And I think this is very common in people's experience in these kinds of situations.
There's also this a sense of a force moving me that's different from a concept I would have had of it before. Probably not more to say at this point.
Well, this is very, very good. You're feeling what's actually happening here. There is a force that's doing all this. And there's various technical terms for it and a lot of metaphorical terms for it. It's the will of God. It's the Kundalini Shakti.
Right.
It's, there's all of these technical terms depending on your tradition, but we discover that we are not this little individual thing in this vast world. There's this inconceivable force or machinery that is doing all of this, that we actually are what's doing all this, and all of this is happening in us. And again, this is a revelation we have to live with, to assimilate, because it's astounding.
Right, because what's actually happening on both of these fronts is that, they're moving from the concept into something other.
Yeah.
And we'll see how they come together.
Yeah. Well, this is
Thank
it. This revelation is real. It is unexpected. It doesn't make sense. It's non-conceptual. And it's a shocker. I mean, this is very typical to just have to live, to unfold into this and begin to be more comfortable in it, ultimately. Which we do just by exposure and by our interest in and the certainty of this revelation, that it's not conceptual. There's something going on, which is amazing. No, that's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that.
Maybe about 3 weeks ago, I was in a satsang in San Francisco, and there was a moment when I found it's hard to communicate this, but it was like I didn't know anything.
Mm-hmm.
It was like I felt stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it doesn't matter, and everything is okay. And I think there has been some incorporation within this structure that has, not rejected all of it, but it feels like, moving away or contracting from this seeing, oh, it's all fine. I noticed that my thoughts were not running me. Because if I don't give meaning to anything, they lose their juice, they lose their hold.
Mm-hmm.
But since then, that was maybe 3 weeks ago, it's like I don't feel, it's closed down to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you perhaps were just addressing that issue about, the back and forth kind of thing.
This is very, very typical in people's experience. I would say, the vast, vast majority of people have exactly this kind of experience in their unfoldment process, of a kind of a period of revelation where we get these naked experiences, and then there's a kind of a period of integration where we move back to some extent into our old way of holding things, but still in the context of having had that experience, it all sort of digests itself through this process. It feels sloppy and it feels like we're falling back, but in actual fact, I think that's not the case. I think that this is a process of integration, because again, it's not a simplistic matter of, you completely leave your life and you completely leave your context and you just go off into the light. I think in most cases, you go off into the light, but your life comes along and you discover, well, my life is light, and it always has been, and my thoughts are light, and my inclinations are light, and even my limitations are light, and so, but to get that, to really get this, that it's all okay, we have to revisit the parts that we're used to thinking of as relatively not okay to discover that they are. And most typically for most of us, I think this is a long, protracted process with a lot of yo-yoing.
Well, I found myself running around the Bay Area, going to as many satsangs as I can. It seems like it's helping.
Right. Well, in India, that's what they say. In India, they say if you want to spiritual realization, go hang out with holy people. So,
can I touch your feet?
If you want, but it's not any advantage. Except maybe the aerobic value. Oh yeah, we have. I'm sorry. Yeah, one from online, and then we'll get back there in just a sec.
This is from Frank Sudia.
Ah, hello, Frank.
It's a Frank question. In
Frank's a
Berson's
funny guy.
essay on Dzogchen, he says that when you reach essence Rigpa, the energy winds dissolve.
The energy which?
Winds.
Right.
What's up with that?
Because the energy winds consist of Rigpa. It's kind of like when you go to sleep, the world winds dissolve, because they consist of the energy which is present in sleep, which is latent world, so to speak. I didn't put that very well. Let me try again. There's one force and one substance, and all apparent differentiation consists of that one force and that one substance without it departing from its unity. So when we have the many winds, the many forces, they are not actually differentiated from each other. They are actually the one force. And when we go to Rigpa, we are at the one force, so the differentiation is unnecessary. It's and it's one of these weird things because the forces aren't different than the one, and the one isn't different than the forces. They're different. It's like a dream is made of sleep. Sleep hasn't gone anywhere when you dream. It just looks complicated. And then when the dream stops and you go into deep sleep, there's not any less event happening. It just looks a lot simpler. So you're being with the same reality on a more simple level. Let's say it's not actually simple in terms of levels. That the words give a lie to it. Let's call it a continuous. It's a continuous aspect as opposed to a differentiated aspect. But again, when you go to the continuous aspect, when you go to sleep, the dream disappears. And likewise, when you go to Rigpa, when you go to naked awareness, the differentiations disappear. Technically.
Okay, the next question says, when you say, when you ask people to question, what's this? Are you being rhetorical?
No.
Because the present speaks for itself.
Yes, the present speaks for itself, and seeing that is answering the question, what's this? What's this? Asking the question, what's this, is offering it an opportunity to speak for itself. Or I should say, to notice it speaking for itself.
I was standing up in the Berkeley Hills, and it was kind of a balmy, warm day, and the wind was, I was in a short sleeve, and the wind was blowing through my arms, and I thought, what would Peter Brown think about this wind that was sweeping past his arm? And then I sort of answered the question. It was like just one of the systems of yourself, unlike your pulmonary system. Mm-hmm. Was I right?
Yes.
Okay, second question. I was at a satsang about 2 months ago, and someone was asking a question, and I didn't understand what the question was, but I had the sense
that happens to me often. I just make up an answer anyway. Hopefully it's not too annoying. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, that's all right. And so I didn't understand their question, but I got the sense that their question was perfect. Does that make sense too?
Yes.
Good.
All questions are perfect.
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah, okay.
And all answers are perfect, but some are a lot more artful than others. Pray for the artful answers.
Okay. I don't know if this is an artful question or not. You mentioned a couple or three times while you were talking with the others about that there's only, or something about my awareness. That really, I kind of got my awareness. So it doesn't make sense to me because there's awareness. And I can't attribute it to a me, like that's how it seems here. Because if it were my awareness, I could only then say, it's the body-mind, but it's clearly the other way around, where the body-mind is in awareness. So then
Right.
There's nothing outside of awareness. So then my mind goes like, that who is the my? And so I'm not sure whether when you said that is in the context of answering the question, or maybe there's something more that I'm, getting myself confused over something.
No. This is just the imprecision of language. All language is totally imprecise, and hence totally inaccurate. In other words, everything we say, if you take the literal meaning of the words, is completely wrong. So, my awareness refers to the awareness,
Right,
which
okay.
happens to be the awareness that you're experiencing. The awareness that you're experiencing is the only awareness, and it's yours. So in that sense, you could say it's my awareness, and you say, well, what is me? And if you look for a me, you don't find anything other than the awareness.
Right.
So it's your awareness. So saying your awareness is just a tautology. You're just saying I,
Okay.
or awareness,
Okay.
my awareness. So, but
Because
again,
I guess the way I would say it to myself is there is awareness, and I can't attribute it to anybody,
right.
except that, of course,
Well,
like you said, there's I.
But
there's I.
in the context of that one awareness, there is nobody.
Right.
So it's not that you can't attribute it to anybody. It's just the notion of attributing it to anybody is nonsensical because there is nobody.
Right.
There is the awareness, and there's apparition within that awareness.
Okay.
And that entire thing is what you are. So you could say that's linguistically. You could
Okay.
say that's me.
Gotcha.
So I am this awareness that everything appears in, and there's no everything.
Okay.
And
Totally
it's
clear.
debatable even whether there's appearance, but that's getting
Yeah.
a little esoteric.
That's getting into the words. Okay. Very artful answer. Thank you.
That raises another question in my mind, which is when you can say my awareness, and you could say our awareness. Is that correct?
Is that meaningful to you?
Well, it is in light of the next question I have, if that first one is accurate. I'll just go to that one if you like.
When you say our awareness, you're talking about fantasies. So which you're free to do. You can talk about our awareness just like we can talk about Mickey Mouse or Santa Claus. We can talk about Santa Claus, but you're not going to find a real Santa Claus. So you can talk about my awareness, but if you look in your experience, you're not going to find my awareness. So it's just like talking about Santa Claus. It's not that you can know it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist that you can verify, that you can find. It may or may not exist in some sense that is inconceivable.
Right. Well, I guess where I get confused there is that, like you said, like there's the awareness. There's awareness itself.
Yes.
Which we all partake of.
No.
No?
That's your fantasy. How do you know we all partake of it? What awareness do you have in your experience? Have you ever experienced any awareness other than your awareness? Ever?
Not really. No, I guess not.
I guess not. So the notion of any other awareness is a fantasy which occurs in your awareness, or let's call it a concept which occurs in your awareness. You can hold that concept, and you can hold it as a hypothesis, but you can't know it. You can't know another awareness because you only have ever known one awareness.
Right. Okay. So when that's.
I mean, is that the case?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that. But when you said a little while ago, talking here was you said the awareness or awareness itself or something like that.
Well, when I say the awareness, when I'm talking to you, obviously it refers to your awareness because it's the only awareness, so we can call it the awareness. We don't need to differentiate it because there's only one apparent. It's not like there's another one here and we need to say the one on the left or the one on the right. It's just the one that's there.
Well, we all have different awarenesses.
Well, that's the fantasy you're having. How can you say that and know anything about that?
Well,
you can assert it.
Okay, well, we have different fantasies in the sense that our awareness...
We do? How can you know that anyone else has fantasies?
Well, I'm saying the contents of my awareness are not going to be the same as the contents of someone else's awareness.
Yeah, but you don't know that anyone else has awareness, so that's irrelevant.
Well, if I listen to you talk, I can detect an awareness there that doesn't.
Can you?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the same as.
Suppose you're dreaming, and I'm sitting in front of you, and we're having this exact same conversation, and I'm sitting here, and my face is presenting, and I'm moving my eyebrows up and down, and I'm moving my head side to side, and I'm waving, and I'm dreaming. How many awarenesses are present?
One.
In what way whatsoever that you personally can verify is this situation at all different from that situation?
Okay, well, the confusion in my mind comes from the fact that, like, of being a sort of all-inclusive awareness or something like that, which maybe I have access to from my own experiences and history and all that. I don't know the nature of your experience of that because it's, you know,
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
I'm just thinking of the individual experiences that we each have.
You keep saying this, we each. How do you know we each have experiences? The only experiences you know are yours. You don't know anyone else has experiences.
Well,
Suppose you're the only being that exists in the entire universe, and this is all your fantasy. Sci-fi, this is sci-fi, let's say, okay? And you are the supreme intelligence, and for some demented reason, you're having this as a vision, as a hallucination. Can you prove that isn't the case? On the basis of the evidence of what you're actually experiencing?
I don't know if I can prove that it's not the case, but if I experience someone else, like yourself, talking from a totally different frame of different experience than the one that I've had in my life, that seems to be quite different. You know, you talk about things that I've never heard of before.
Yeah, but every instant you're exposed to things you've never heard of before. You read a book, you've never heard of it. But again, suppose we're dreaming and you're talking to me, and I start talking about the gobbledygook of the gobbledygook, and you've never heard of the gobbledygook of the gobbledygook, but it's a dream. You're basically talking to yourself. How do you know that's not happening here? You seem to have a pretty solid faith that it's not. A conviction that I actually have another awareness, and I may, as far as you know.
Right.
But how can you possibly know that? How can you assume that with any degree of certainty?
Well, I'm not sure you can positively assume anything with any degree of certainty.
Good. So you can't assume anything. So let's set all these assumptions, all these hypotheses, these possibilities aside. What can you know for sure?
The awareness of my own mind.
Yes.
Right. But
So that's real. My awareness may be real, but that's a hypothesis. What is real is your awareness of your experience, right? So why not start there and worry about that? If you find out what that is, you'll be doing pretty good, without going off into other people and other universal awarenesses and all this other pie in the sky, which may or may not hold, but since you don't have direct access to it anyway, who cares? I mean, you have something very powerful that's very real and immediately accessible. You said your awareness exists. You know it for a fact. I mean, if I said your awareness doesn't exist, you'd laugh. You'd say, well, yeah, bullshit. You know, I happen to know that it does. So that's powerful. So cool. So you got your foot in the door of this amazing circumstance of your awareness exists and there's appearances in it. So great. So cool. So you have something to look at. You have something to investigate. And I assert, if you investigate that and find out what's going on there without resort to further elaborations, just stay with that root fact and really look at what it is, it will be very revelatory without going into a lot of complications and elaborations.
Okay, the complications and elaborations are the adventure or whatever of connecting or learning from other experiences and other minds. Like, I come here on
yeah, but you don't know they're other.
Well,
and saying that they're other is just attributing a complication. You're strapping yourself with a belief that isn't verifiably true. You may as well believe in Santa Claus. You may as well believe in Nazism. You may as well believe in Republicanism. You may as well believe in anything. Yeah. No, you know what I mean? So I mean, as soon as you put the foot in the door of believing in hypotheses and fantasies, whew, you're gone. Anything goes. You know, it's like we really need to discover eighth chakra of consciousness of the third reindeer in Santa's 12 reindeers, because that's like where we're going to get the answers. It's like, we're off. We're off. And all of a sudden you're a cultist, or you're, drinking the Kool-Aid or something, because you're just, you're off in Never Never Land. Where you find real spirituality is an outgrowth of real investigation of what's really present. Pure and simple. And going into fantasy is not pulling you in that direction.
Well, learning or whatever, finding things from quote other people, that seems to happen all the time.
Sure, that's great.
Yeah, I mean.
But you don't know it's other people, so I would say, instead of learning things from other people, I would say learning.
Yeah.
It may or may not be other people. It's what we can arbitrarily designate as other people.
Right.
I mean, I can suppose you might actually exist, but I know for a fact this communication is happening, whether or not it's an actual communication. Yeah. But that's irrelevant. Who cares whether it's a communication? Right. It's meaningful in its own terms as an energy flowering, as a fascinating presence, a fascinating present unfoldment.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Is it quitting time? Well, the clock on the wall says it's about time to go. I hope you all have had half as much fun as I have. Hot damn. Anyway, thanks a lot for coming. And on December 1st, I'll be having another public meeting. It will not be here for a change. It will be in El Cerrito, and the address is available on my website if you're interested. We'd love to have you. And I'll be back here 2 weeks after that, and thereafter the first and third Wednesday every month. And if you're interested in this kind of weirdness, please stop by.
And that day one